Hi again then guys, and so today I wanted to put out a video which I don't necessarily have a length for in mind. I'll just say as long as it takes to say it. Hopefully that won't be too long. And this is something which has no direct attachment per se to any of the gaming stuff which I do on the channel, because this is something which goes beyond gaming in terms of importance and in terms of how many people it can potentially help. Because as some of you know, especially those who have followed this channel for a bit longer, way back I did a live on-screen series, well, live in as much as I was on screen, for how to be a better tuner. Not groundbreaking stuff, really, pretty basic principles that being a real-life mechanic helped me to understand in the gaming world. Now that's not the primary point. The point that I'm making is I like putting out videos like that. Videos which approach what somebody who doesn't have that information could see as a very complex issue, but then giving them the information to make it nice and simple and to overcome that potential issue in a really easy way. And with that in mind, this particular video is addressing something which hasn't been raised specifically. Sometimes I do get comments about it, but it's not an issue for me. It never has been. It doesn't even bother me. But I know a lot of people do find this very disheartening. And I know that many of you guys on the channel have either already started to build your own channel, maybe you don't have a set direction for it yet, maybe you don't have your own branding, all that kind of stuff. Maybe you do have, maybe you are at that level, or maybe you haven't even started yet, but you would like to. So basically this information is fairly inclusive as far as that goes, because on YouTube, the boogeyman of YouTube for most people, especially smaller channels, is the dreaded dislike button. Now when you have a smaller channel with less views and definitely less likes in comparison, a dislike on a video of any kind of quality can seem disheartening. Now for me, it never has. And I can say that honestly because I believe that I have a psychopathic personality. So I just don't care about stuff like that. I know that my quality is content, regardless of if anyone else thinks it is at all. I don't care. But for other people, I know that they do. People who tend to have more of a community-based personality, if you will be affected more by that. They do care about getting dislikes, and that is understandable. I'm not necessarily saying that my way is normal, certainly not. Most people would be affected by that. But basically the information that I want to tell you is just some little tips that I would recommend to keep in mind when you get your first dislike, or when you get any dislikes, no matter how large the channel is. Because there are certain things that you need to remember, which even coming from someone like me who has what is still relatively a small channel, it still applies. It doesn't matter how big the channel is, it's something which can universally be helpful. And that is the number one principle that I would tell any channel to bear in mind who is finding those dislikes to be disheartening, is the dislike button only has the relevance that you place upon it. Somebody pressing the dislike button means nothing unless you decide it does, because that person has no power. 9 times out of 10, there's some scrawny little troll with literally nothing in life. They're too spineless to put a comment, they don't want to put a name, and they're perfectly happy with having their 5 seconds of fame being turned into basically a faceless statistic, just a dislike on a video. You can't even tell who put the dislike, they're that much of a coward. Now with that being said, you can then decide how to take that, because that's the only power they have, to press the button or not to press it. But at the end of the day, it's you who decides whether that like button or that dislike button is like a nuclear bomb or like a light switch without a wire attached to it. Because if you decide that that's all that matters, then it'll hit you hard. If you decide that it has no power, which is the honest truth about it, then it won't affect you. Now, am I saying that I like dislikes? Of course not. I don't really care. But if I had the option, of course I would choose not to have them. It's certainly nice to have far more likes than dislikes, and that has always been the case on this channel, with very, very few exceptions. And the exceptions that I do have are understandable, things that I've said that are very controversial, such as my review for Assetto Corsa. Of course I knew that that was going to have a lot of dislikes. That doesn't surprise me at all. In fact, I even turned the comments off because no beneficial discussion was being had. It was just mindless fanboys ranting without really caring about the other side of an argument. And as far as I'm concerned, I see no need to allow that. So I turn the comments off. On pretty much any other video, those comments can happen and the discussions can be had because they're in a civil way. And I know that the vast majority of you guys on the channel enjoy having those civil discussions, because unlike a lot of fandoms, and I won't name names, but you can actually think for yourselves, and I like that. I'm not interested in leading a pack of lemmings to jump off of a cliff. I like people who can think for themselves, and that's the whole point of the tuning that I do, to help people help themselves, not to help people become dependent on me. So, at the end of the day, the dislike button can be pressed for a number of reasons. It can be a straight-up mistake sometimes, and that's something which is easy to forget. I have literally had multiple occasions where I will release a video, it will have a dislike within a couple of minutes, but then the dislike will disappear. And the only conclusion I can reach is that it must have been a misclick, because you cannot have clicked it after disagreeing with the video because it was too soon. You cannot have watched the whole thing, and I would have pretty much never said something that controversial that early in the video. So the fact that it came up so early and was then removed indicates to me that it was probably a mistake. So that can happen, and that's easy to forget. Another thing that can happen is you can have someone who genuinely disagrees, and that's kind of the point of the dislike bar. Those ones you don't even really need to be angry about. But the problem is the ambiguity. You don't know the reason why it was clicked, and that can be an issue if you allow it to be. Then, of course, the third way, the one which we imagine all of them are, is the mindless trolls, who just dislike because they can. And there are people who do that. There are people who follow numerous huge channels just to dislike everything they do. But you know what I say to those people? Go ahead and dislike my videos. In fact, you should click on every single one of my videos and dislike it. You know why? Because you just gave me 2,800 views. And that is what every person who goes on videos to dislike them is doing. Getting more views for the channel. That's the only power they have. If they actually cared about the channel failing, then they should not click on the video at all. That would be a much better way of doing it. So, for those people who are the traditional trolls, they can't be reasoned with. There's no point in trying. I see people trying to break down the mentality of those people, and I'm not really going to get into that because I frankly couldn't care less what their mentality is. They do it for attention, that's all I need to know. If that's what they want, that's exactly what I'm not going to give them. So, as I said, the most important thing is to remember that the only person who really matters when it comes to the dislike bar is you. If you decide that it's going to hurt you, then it will. If you decide that it doesn't matter, which is the honest truth, because the dislike button does literally nothing. It's almost like Google themselves and YouTube are trolling the trolls. They've given them this button, which they can flick up and down all day, but it does nothing. It's that light switch attached to nothing. So it's kind of like the equivalent for a troll of a stress ball. It really has no purpose beyond just them having something to do. So overall, that's just what I wanted to say. I know that it's something which affects a lot of people, and if this can benefit you in some way, especially when you're starting out, to just overlook that, because it just weighs you down. And especially when you're a smaller channel, that is the case, because people who dislike videos from small channels are only doing it for one reason. They're trying to put you off, because they have such little to do in life, they're so spineless and lack any kind of creative mind, that they can't even get a channel started. 9 times out of 10, those people probably don't even have a profile picture. They're that lazy and inept and creatively stunted. But at the end of the day, that's their problem. It's literally not your concern, and no point in wasting your time over it. So, as I said, I hope this can benefit some people to just overlook it completely, focus on every like if you want to instead. That's certainly a constructive way of doing it. And to keep going, because haters are still getting you views.